Hello everyone and good evening. It is 7:30, so let's get started with our session. And welcome to our event in conversation with the President of the IMechE, Terry Spall, and the new German Group Chair, David Eyre-Jackson. Also on the panel tonight, we have Graham Wilcox, who's Vice Chair of the Germany Group. For those of you who have not met me, I'm Farah Baksh. I'm the Global Relationship Manager, and I support companies and individuals with professional registration. And part of my role is providing support to individuals and companies in Germany. So I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our webinar tonight. You've all joined this session muted, and that's just to drown out any background noise. And just to let you know, the session will be recorded tonight. Please use the chat box and introduce yourself. It's always good to know who has joined us and where they're based. Please use the chat box to ask any questions, and you can address those questions to all panelists. And after our discussion, we will have an opportunity for a question and answer period. Given we cannot meet in person at present, this webinar has been added to provide you an opportunity to interact with Terry and David and to put questions to them. I'm on hand to provide a brief update and deal with any queries on membership and professional registration. In the past, when we've hosted these events face-to-face, only a number of members have had the opportunity to engage with the President. So one of the fantastic advantages of having a virtual event is that so many members can engage from wherever you're based and from the comforts at your own home with no travel involved. So thank you very much, Terry. And as the title suggests, it's an informal event and provides an opportunity on how you can get involved with your committee and be inspired to get involved with the institution. So as I mentioned, please use the chat box to ask any questions. And before I hand over to Terry, I would just like to say a few words about Terry. Terry is a chartered mechanical engineer, a fellow of the institution, and has served on many IMechE committees over the years. He's been a member of the trustee board for 5 years, vice president for 4 years, and has chaired both the Technical Strategy Board and the Regional Strategy Board. He was also Chief Judge for the Formula Student Competition. And outside the IMechE, Terry has had a long and successful career in the automotive industry. He's worked at Leyland Trucks, Myra, and later Horiba Myra. He has led the establishment of Myra's overseas operations in 7 countries, including India and China. Terry is also a keen fell walker and has successfully trekked to Base Camp Everest and restored classic cars. Terry can very much relate to the pressures members face in their day-to-day role. And I think Terry has also done some very positive change already in his presidency with the introduction of the President Inside Track. So let's hear more about the IMechE plans for the future. So over to you, Terry.
Okay, well, thank you, Farah, for the very kind introduction, and good evening, everybody. It's nice to be able to talk to you all. Virtual's great, as you heard from Farah, but the one drawback is we can't have a beer afterwards, so I do apologise for that. Maybe one day, if we ever get out of lockdown, I can come across and we can have a chat and do it properly. But for now, I've done many of these already, and they are proving quite effective as a way of communicating with people, and also as a way of just getting to know what people feel about the institution and the issues and the way ahead. So it has been quite effective. We like them to be quite informal, so don't feel that you've got any airs and graces. We're in this together. It's a bit of a fireside chat, really. So let's just go for it, and I'll tell you a little bit first of all about the institution. I'm sure many of you know already exactly what it is and what it does. So I'm going to give you a few updates and a few highlights of the things that we're dealing with at the moment. I hope you find that interesting. Then I'll hand over to David, and he'll tell you a bit more about what's happening more locally in Germany, and then we'll do the Q&A at the end. So I've got a few slides to take you through, so I'll go through those first, and hopefully you'll find what I've got to say interesting. So I've got to start with COVID. I was going to start with Brexit, and I'm going to start with COVID instead. And I'm not going to talk about Brexit at all, to be honest. That's deliberate. But COVID is upon us, and we've had a bit of a tough time of it here in the UK, as you have in Germany. You're probably doing better than we are at the moment. We're on the crest of a second peak. At least I hope we're on a crest and about to go down, but who knows? Either way, we've got bits of the country in lockdown. The institution building, having only just opened, is obviously facing restrictions again. And it's just making everything very difficult. So I'm a third the way through my presidency, and I've only held one physical meeting, which was last week, which was our AGM. All the rest have been virtual. So it's a bit of an odd year. A bit of an odd year to be president, but there you go. That's the luck of the draw. But COVID is very important, and as engineers, we have a lot to offer the world, actually, in terms of how COVID can be mitigated. So we've put together something called the COVID Task Force that's currently chaired by Professor Joe McGeoch, who's the immediate past president. And we've got expertise in there from many different parts of the institution, and really putting together best practice and guidance on how people out in industry and the wider society really can best deal with this COVID pandemic. Certainly when it comes down to things like how you can travel safely on public transport and how you can make buildings safe from a COVID perspective. So lots of really great things going on there. We're also engaged with government. So that group also has two people from the SAGE group. So if you're familiar with that, it's perhaps more of a UK term than a German term, but it's the UK government's got something called the SAGE group, which advises the government. It brings together scientists and engineers and medical professionals to advise the government on what to do with COVID. And we're making quite a decent contribution, I think, really. A lot more to do for sure, but we are making a contribution. Go on our website. That picture you can see there is off our website. You get a bit more of an insight as to what we're doing. And it's quite amazing how many volunteers, how many members have stepped forward to offer their expertise. We've had temporary hospitals set up in the UK, and some of that work was done by IMechE people to help to get those off the ground and get them operational. So quite impressive, really. More to come. I like to use this slide because people often don't talk about diversity and inclusion, and I was perhaps one of them. But as president now, I've had to really focus on this, and my eyes have been opened, I have to say, because I thought I knew a little bit about it, and in reality, I knew very little. But it is so important today. You hear all the things about Black Lives Matters and all the rest of it, and it really does. We need to change our game and make sure that we do include everybody in the things that we do, and it certainly applies in the institution as well. We are in a male-dominated industry. You look at the percentage of females in engineering, it's nowhere near high enough. When you look at the IMechE, it's slightly higher than the norm, but not much. When you get to the younger end of the institution, then we do much better. But regardless, gender is not just the only aspect of inclusion. There are many aspects of it as well. But we are now doing some fairly major initiatives. There's a big thing underway at the moment. We've had all sorts of focus groups running, talking to members and trying to educate them and get their thoughts as to how we can do this better, how we can make our institution more inclusive, so everybody has a better experience of being part of it and does not feel excluded in any way or discriminated against. So you'll hear more about this now. Many of you may be involved already, I don't know. It is quite diverse, the group that are doing it, but they're doing some really great things, and they absolutely have my full support, and I get involved wherever I can. But for me, it has been a learning exercise, and I'll quite freely say that, but a very welcome learning exercise to understand more about this. Looking at sort of internal matters, if I mentioned the fact we had choppy waters to navigate in 2018, you'd probably nod your heads and say, yes, we know all about that, we've heard about it. It wasn't a great time in the institution, and as a consequence, we had 3 major reviews of how we do governance, how we govern the institution, how we manage our financial affairs, and how we look after discipline and code of conduct. And those reviews reported last year. And when I came in as president-elect, my job was to work on the implementation of those reviews. I worked on it for a year. I've now handed over to Dr. Kerry Mashford, and she's now got a larger team, trying to get it all finished within this year. So some quite sweeping changes to how we run the IMechE. And it's going to take us from being kind of a player to almost best in class when it comes to governance in a professional engineering institution. And it is really, really important. It's created a far greater sense of transparency in what we do, and I'll talk about some of those aspects today as well. But also, I think it's going to give us a much more stable base to build and grow in the future. But lots of good things have been done. The structure of the organisation now is being changed, and what we're doing now is that we have the trustee board. So the trustee board runs the institution. So the institution is a charity, it's a registered charity, and it has to be for all sorts of financial reasons, but it's the right vehicle for us. But in a charity, the trustee board runs it. I'm one of 12 trustees, which means that even though I'm president, I only have 1/12 of the vote on anything. So I have to persuade people. I have to convince them that this is the right way to go forward. I can't just be dictatorial at all. It doesn't work. What we've done now is that the trustees focus on governance, and we've relinquished our control on the operational boards. So most of our operational boards now are going to be self-chaired. Things like the technical strategy board and the regional strategy board, which you heard Farah mention before, they will elect their own chair, where previously they've been chaired by a trustee. So these are the operational boards. So the prizes and awards, the qualifications and membership, a very, very important board in there. The engineering and technology board, or the technology strategy board, as it's been previously known, and the new membership engagement board, which brings together all of our international regions, our UK regions, all into one body that's represented there, will be chaired by a member who is not a trustee. So it allows the trustees then to focus on governance, and governance involves things like the finance, how we manage our finances, how we plan strategy for the institution. So I have to say we've done it in the past, but we've never done it really well, in my personal view. I think we could do better. Looking forward now, the way we're going to do it is going to be much more robust. It's going to engage many more parts of the institution in planning our strategy for the future. That process has started now, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go forward. Nominations committee, again, very important. That is the committee that nominates people to the senior positions, and I'll come back to that later on. There's some interesting developments there. The audit and risk committee, so how do we make sure that we're doing things right, that there's no mismanagement or anything like that. We have an audit and risk committee who basically, they're the policemen who look after the institution. And then the remunerations committee that sets the remuneration for our senior staff members. So that's how it splits. We also have other groups that are currently reporting into that. So the International Strategy Board will be part of the Member Engagement Board going forward. This is kind of work in progress, so it's not finished yet. We're still working on it. The Diversity and Inclusion Board will report into the Trustee Board. That was a decision that we took. You just see that that is something that is the best place for it, really. And then we have our council. The council is going through a transformation as well, but the council is an advisory board that advises the trustees on matters relating to members' interests. So if it sees things it doesn't like, or if it's got good ideas, then there's a channel there for those things to come back into the trustee board. But under the new structure, then things like the member engagement board and the engineering and technology board, they too can feed back into the trustee board as well to get that sort of two-way connection. The transparency and communications are really, really important, and we've made quite a lot of changes already. I don't know if you've seen the thing called the Inside Track. It's something that I've created to try and communicate to people what goes on in trustee meetings, because there are obviously many things that are discussed that are quite confidential. There are other things that are discussed that are not confidential but are of great member interest, and we try to capture all those in those reports. I'm just currently writing another one, which will be the 3rd edition, which will probably go out in a week or so's time. The feedback we've had has been quite good. I think people like to see what's going on. They like to hear about what's going on. I've had good feedback, I've had bad feedback, but we get feedback, and I think that's the most important thing. We can hear what people really think about these matters. We've also started to use Twitter as well. So we've had what's called Twitter takeovers, where we basically have our social team working flat out on Twitter, I've done one which lasted for 2 hours, and we're now going through. Members of the trustee board in small groups are responding to any questions that anybody wants to put to them on any subject. And it's quite interesting how that's progressing. So lots of things are happening to try and make it more transparent so you can see and get a feel for what's going on. But you've got channels there to get your questions in and get them answered. So a lot more things to happen, and you'll see that because that came out of the government review that communications were not good enough and we need to do them better. So lots of things are going to happen to use the communication channels better. So obviously, yeah, things like email, but also social media and other channels much more effectively so we can communicate well to our members. I hope some of you have had the chance to go to our building. It is quite magnificent. It's been around quite a while. It's very much a part of what the IMechE is. It's based right next to Parliament in London, in Westminster. It's a very, very significant asset, of very high value. But it's also a very old building, which means that it's got a lot of maintenance associated with it as well. And we are at a stage now where we've been pushing certain items of maintenance back and back and back, but we've got to the point now where it's caught up with us, and we need to put a strategy together as to how we can keep that building going so it'll be there for the next generation of IMechE members as well. So I put together a real estate strategy group last year, and that's running now, and that'll be actually, it's been reaching out to different parts of members groups like council and things like that to get their view on what the building is, what it should do for members. Do we still need it in fact? And it's quite interesting to see what people's views are. You can see in the pictures on the right there, it is quite beautiful, it's magnificent. If you get the chance to go, it's your building in fact. So go, when you go through London, go use it. It's got an amazing library. The library is also available online, so you don't need to go to use the library services. And they're far better than Google. When it comes down to engineering matters, you get in there, they'll find you what you really want to know. And it's got a great Let's Theatre as well. So lots of things to happen there, but I just put it up really because it is quite significant. And we are currently working on how we make this sustainable for the future. I've got a few things coming up. Obviously, as president, you have quite a busy diary, but with the virtual world of COVID, I've had a less busy diary, I have to say. But I've got one or two interesting things coming up. I'm meeting a Member of Parliament, Stephen Metcalfe, in just over a week's time. He's the UK government's engineering envoy, and I'll be challenging him on what the government's position is on engineering and how we persuade young people to get into engineering and how we help people through their studies to become engineers. There's lots of things I think the government could do to make it easier for people who have the ability to have the opportunity. And I'll certainly be working on that. So if you have any questions that you'd like me to put to this Member of Parliament, then please do send them, and I will put them to him to get the opportunity. Also, I'm meeting the presidents of the Institute of Civil Engineers and the Institution of Engineering Technology on the 14th of October. And that's something I've initiated, and it's really to get to know them, but also to share good practice. So I want to find out what issues they're dealing with at the moment. You may know that in our last election, for example, the turnout in the election was very low this year. It was 7-point-something%. Normally it's about 14 or 15%. So we all started worrying that members are generally less interested in what's going on in the institution. But when we talked to the Institution of Civil Engineers, they had exactly the same. Their turnout was about 7% as well. So when you start to talk, you can understand then it's actually perhaps the impact of COVID that really stopped a lot of people because they were furloughed, not able to get into the office, and they couldn't vote as they would normally. There could be a whole multitude of issues, but we are looking at it with our council working on that as well. So again, if you have any questions you'd like me to put to those two presidents of those institutions, I'm more than happy to do that as well. A presidential year is quite short, and I'm already a third of the way through it. It goes in a flash. But I am trying to do certain things this year. I am an automotive engineer, as you've heard, so my technical theme is the future of mobility. So if I ever get to do my presidential address, and I hope I do, to a live audience in person, which will be wonderful, I'll be talking about the future of transport, the passenger car and all the rest of it, looking at things like electrification and self-driving technologies and many other things as well. I've got on the screen there strategy and nominations. So strategy is ever so important for us now. We are going to be reaching out across the institution, asking people to think about strategy and what they want to see for the institution in the future. And it can cover whatever aspects you want. That will be fed into a central strategy committee. And what's going to be different now is that the people who are on that committee are going to be carefully selected by virtue of their experience and their skills to do strategic planning. And not just anybody. We're trying to pick members who have really deep experience of strategic planning. And the nominations committee is going to help us to do that. So the nominations committee is being set up right now. It's not run by the president anymore. It's actually run by a past president. And the reason for that is to get around this perception of cronyism, that you get somebody in as president and they bring all the friends along with them and they take all the senior positions. It doesn't quite work like that, but you can easily see how that perception exists out there. So when we did a survey, when we did the governance review, that was part of the feedback, that people felt it was too much of a closed shop and they didn't have an opportunity to go for senior positions. The nominations committee on NOMCO is going to change that. So the president does not sit on there anymore. None of the president-elect doesn't sit on there anymore. It's people who are selected to be impartial, but they're going to be our talent organisation within the institution. They will reach out to people. They'll look for people with certain skill sets, try and encourage them to bring them forward into relevant positions to help the institution. I'm also, from my background, I've spent a lot of time overseas working in different markets. So whilst I'm in my year, I want to try and bring some of these international markets forward. I'm currently talking to our guys in Japan, see if we can do more in Japan. I'm planning to talk to the guys in India as well. Lots of things like that to see if, because our international membership is very significant and it's gaining in significance. So we are no longer a UK organisation that has overseas operations. We are a global operation, a global institution. And I think that's really important. And we need to change to make ourselves relevant to have that status. So we have to be able to deliver effectively to all our markets, no matter where they are in the world. Relevance is very important. So we are mechanical engineers, but when you look at what mechanical engineers do these days, they don't just do mechanical engineering. They write software, they do all kinds of things. So we need to recognise that, and we've got groups of engineers working in things like battery technology or sustainability, the route to net zero. There are lots of areas out there in the industry at the moment that are very topical, but they're not really reflected in the interest groups within the institution because we haven't changed. We haven't changed our group to reflect current practice. So I'm trying to make that happen this year, that we'll look across the patch and try and pick up the areas. It could be things like AI or autonomy. We should have a group on AI in the institution. Try and pick the winners, pick the ones that the areas where members are working at, so we become more relevant to them as members, but also more relevant to their employers. And I think that's very important as well. I want to do more on policy, so we have a voice. The government likes to hear what we have to say, but what we have to say really should come from the members. It should be driven by our expert members. We have a great comms team. I want to see it produce more output. And get more members in front of cameras and get their names behind articles and things like that to really get our voice out there. That's really important as well. And the final one on there really is getting the next generation ready. So, my meeting with the MP is part of that to start that process running. But I want to see what we can do this year to really give people a chance. Degrees are expensive. If we can find ways to make it easier for people to get on an engineering degree course, not by lowering the bar, but perhaps financially, because some people do work on limited means. But if they've got the ability, if we can get them on a degree course, we should really try and do that. Because, certainly in the UK and certainly in Germany, engineers add huge value to the economy. And we've not got enough engineers. So if we can help solve that problem, and government's sympathetic to that, willing to work with us, then let's see what we can do during this year. So there we go. That's my set of slides. So I hope you found that interesting. I think I'm going to hand over to David now, if that's correct, and then I'll pick up questions after David has spoken.
Thank you, Terry, for that very interesting and informative insight. Our next speaker tonight is David Eyre-Jackson, the new Germany Group Chair, Chartered Engineer, and Eyre-Jackson. David studied mechanical engineer at University of Bath, so his initial career was in motorsport. Subsequent roles are in the fields of mining equipment, specialist mechanical handling systems, and engineering asset management software. David joined Airbus in 2003, working on the A380, and moved to Germany in 2006 to lead the A350 full-scale fatigue tests. David's current role is in the airframe programming integrator for A350. David has been involved with the IMechE since graduating, with roles as regional rep for North Germany and now Germany chair. So David, what do you hope to achieve during your time as Germany chair?
Right. Thanks, Farah, for the introduction. Firstly, I'd like to say very many thanks to Terry for being able to participate this evening to at least make a virtual visit to Germany. And we would really like to be able to have a proper stand-ish with you here at sometime in the future, as circumstances allow. And we have, as a group, we have a good distribution of good venues for such events. So, yes, 2020 has been a very, very interesting year for us. Really, right at the start of the year when COVID really started kicking off, we had our first challenge as a group, which was to organise our AGM. What was initially planned as a nice physical event down in the south of Germany suddenly had to change to a virtual event. But it turned out to be a great success. We got the technology worked, and we had a similar level of participation to what we had in our physical meetings. So, yeah, as a meeting, AGM, it went very well, but sadly, no interesting visits to go on with it. So clearly, we've had to completely rejig our program this year, moving into the virtual world, and sadly missing all our physical events. But the group rose to the challenge of this, and really, I think our first success was an event put together by Graham, who's sitting on the panel here tonight as well, which was a webinar about the development of military aircraft engines in the Second World War. This worked really well, very interesting topic, good speaker, and the support that we had from HQ to make the event work was absolutely critical to it. And we had a participation, I think it's about 200 people in total. And that was a really good start to it, and it shows what can be achieved. We're working on following up with further online events, and Graham's got another one organised for the 29th of October, about the development of military fighting vehicles. And I hope people will be able to register for that and participate in that as well. Having made this big move into the virtual world, and it does mean we're having to rethink how we do things. But there's some positive benefits from it in that we're removing the constraints for our events now. And I think that's particularly important in a large country like Germany with a very dispersed membership. And of course, it's not just limited to events going on in the country. You can participate in webinars which are being put on by groups worldwide within the IMechE. We're looking to build on these experiences, and so this is my call to the membership is. If you've got ideas for presentations or willing to participate and give a presentation, whether it's on a single topic, or we can do smaller events which are a compilation of smaller presentations. This is one of the things we've been looking at within the committee. We're very open to ideas, and certainly with the support that we get from headquarters, we can make these events come together very, very quickly in a short period of time. And it's important that we maintain the visibility of the institution in these difficult times. In the terms of the size of the Germany group for our day-to-day business, we've got over 450 institution members, of which just over 200 are affiliates, which are, I think, mainly from the student population interested in the formalist student activity. And then we have roughly 200 full corporate members. And we're distributed across Germany, but with large clusters in the Ruhrgebiet, the area around Frankfurt. Berlin is a cluster around Rolls-Royce, and in southern Germany around the Munich area. In terms of being able to continue our normal business, the important thing is being able to support the membership applications through the professional review interviews. We have a good pool of interviewers, and this has also been subject to change this time, and have now moved to doing virtual interviews. We've completed 2, coordinated by David Foster, and I think it's also online tonight. We have 2 more planned in the near future. I think there's some concerns at the start about how these would go, but I think in general they've been very successful and have led to people achieving corporate membership. Also, in terms of the activities in Germany, one topic which is important for people resident in the country is the topic of Brexit. And there is an opportunity to get things in place before the end of the transition period at the end of this year. One of the things the committee, a couple of committee members have worked on, is looking at how the engineer status, which is a legally protected title in Germany, can be achieved by our members. And similarly, there's issues with the recognition of qualifications. The work done by Adam Lord and Andy Storer enabled us to put together a briefing paper which we sent to members outlining the route to achieving these things. Probably for the majority of the members who are working in larger companies, this is perhaps not a significant issue, but is potentially relevant for people looking for mobility and being able to market themselves in the German engineering market, and for people looking at consultancy things. So the information is in there. Part of this has been developed through our liaison with the VDE, the Verein der Deutschen Ingenieure, which is the professional engineering institution here in Germany. And through the contacts with them, we've gathered a lot of useful information. It's very important that we keep contact with the membership, particularly in these times of uncertainty for many people. We have our own mailing list, which is got a very high level of coverage, but we're also aware that there are a lot of members of the IMechE who are working in Germany, generally on secondment, who are not effectively registered as being resident in Germany for our membership purposes. So these are sort of typically people on secondment to NETMA in Manching, Airbus Defence and Space, and some of the Rolls-Royce people. And I think our key route to maintaining the contact for them is through the LinkedIn group. There is a Germany group, LinkedIn subgroup, which I'd encourage people to join in. Graham in particular is very active in there in terms of publicising events and maintaining the contact with people. So in terms of our way forward as we go on through the year, we'd really love to re-establish the physical Stammtische where feasible. But at the moment, that's looking rather challenging as we come into the winter time. We have a future event identified for the British Embassy, which will probably be in the early part of next year. And for the young members, there's a potential for a Speak Out for Engineering round here based in Germany. So for the important message for me this evening is we need to keep in contact, particularly in times of uncertainty and times of change. There are many networking opportunities through the IMechE for maintaining support and help and developing further opportunities in the future. Come and see what we're doing. Keep engaged with the various groups. The LinkedIn I mentioned earlier, There's a Facebook group for the young engineers, and I really encourage people to get involved. If you feel you want to have a go at making a presentation, get involved, come to us, and make it happen. So that's my thoughts for the coming period, and I hope we can get some return to normality in the next few months, or before the end of next year. Okay, so.
Thank you, David. I just wanted to show a little bit of what resources that you can tap into, and which will only take a few minutes, and then we'll go into the Q&A session. So if we, just picking up on some of the points you said, David, there are wonderful opportunities to get involved in terms of volunteering, and that can be found on the Members Networks Near You page. And what's interesting tonight, it's been fantastic, because we've got some people from Bremen, Cologne, Stuttgart, and it's been great to show this one event, and you can just tap into that event. The other one is you can get involved with divisions and groups. So picking up on a point that Terry said, we have to make these divisions and groups relevant, and relevant to the types of industries and future industries, whether it be automation, AI, robotics, etc. And it's your insight as members that will help drive that and make those divisions and group relevant and provide thought leadership. So please do get involved with that. I mean, you're at the cutting face of it in terms of industry. Since COVID, IMechE has created an IMechE at Home page. There's fantastic information here, whether it be on well-being or STEM activities, which you can actually engage your own children with. There are webinars, so there's a webinar hub. And the great thing with these webinars is that they can help you with your continued professional development. So if you are professionally registered, then it's important you do keep up to date with your CPD, as we do sample 5% of our membership each year. So there's many, many different topics here, and you can, tune into these webinars in your own time. They're updated all the time, so you have from divisions and groups who are also producing webinars. And there is a YouTube channel. So you have many different things on this YouTube channel, whether it be technical subjects, additive manufacturing, softer skills such as unconscious bias. And the other thing that we do have is support. So if any of you are looking for professional registration, I'm happy to arrange virtual one-to-one sessions with you and really talk you through the application process. If your company is interested in professional registration and would like me to do a virtual session explaining the process to professional registration, then I can do that too. So I'm here to help support you through that process. As David mentioned, we are conducting interviews in Germany, so we can help you through that complete process. So please do get in contact if you do need any support. Support network. I thought I'd mention this because it's often something that members forget about. So this is available to you and to your family members. So if you are in a time of need, please do contact the support network, and it could be things around employment coaching, refreshing your CV, prepping you for interview, etc. So a great resource to tap into. And the last one I'm going to mention in terms of support is the library. The library is amazing. It's online, whether you're looking for new regulation, legislation, old drawings, etc. You can get in touch with the library and they're to help. So whether you do that through emailing the library, you can email the library or just get in touch with them online, and they're more than happy to help you. So those are a number of resources. I just wanted to remind you of them. So during these times, we might not be able to go to conferences, etc., but there is information there to help support you. So now I think we'll move over into the question and answer. Okay. So one of the questions that we have is to boost international membership. Terry, you mentioned that was a point that you were interested in. Could we consider adapting membership fees on a country basis to be more competitive?
Very good question. It's a very good question. I mean, it does happen already in some countries where they're on a significantly different economic basis, and we try and make it appropriate. But we, you know, one of the things that we will look at this year is you know, what is our international offer, and you know, is it proportional in that particular country to the fees we charge? So there is work to do on that. At the moment, it is generally the same, so people will pay pretty much the same no matter where they are, apart from one or two countries. I think, as an example, I think India is one of them where it's slightly different. There may be others as well. But yes, it's a good question to ask. I'm afraid I can't give you a precise answer, other than to say that it is on my radar. The things I'm planning to do this year on international markets, I'll certainly be raising that particular point.
Thank you, Terry. Another question, you know, all of you on the panel have been volunteering for some time with the IMechE. Maybe you could tell us why you do it, what you get out of it, and why it has helped, and why someone should consider volunteering. And Graham, I thought it would be good to hear from you.
Yeah, so I'll just unmute myself. Yeah, that's a really good question. For me, being in Germany, I'm really keen to maintain a link back to the UK and UK engineering. And I'm keen to network and engage with people and to get to know other people. And for me, the single greatest way of doing that is to be involved with a regional committee like this, because we've got such a diverse range of people within Germany working here, and people that are moving between the UK and back to Germany. And the IMechE gives a really good link, from my view, to that. Particularly, I work in the automotive industry, and the term of IMechE and the term incorporated engineer or engineering technician or chartered engineer, it's known. It's a common language that I can link to people, and also just linking with other people across Germany, whether they're German nationals or UK nationals. It's a fantastic way to engage and network with people, and that's probably the major benefit that I see in being part of the committee, to be honest, and being engaged.
Thanks, Graham. David, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I see to all the things that Graham's identified, the next networking opportunities there. In addition, I see this as an opportunity for me to put something back into the profession. You know, having been now many years since I graduated, seen many things change in engineering, and it's an opportunity to put my bit back into the profession, into the institution. And certainly my experience here in Germany from the group here, we've had some absolutely fascinating visits, ranging from going out onto a military firing range watching the tanks from Graham's former colleagues, to looking at a house in Hamburg which had its energy source from algae growing on some special glass panels. So it's just the pure variety and the opportunity to exchange with people from different backgrounds and from different parts of the industries and different parts of the country. I was really impressed when I organised a trip around the Airbus plant here in Hamburg, that we had people travelling from the furthest reaches of Germany, and even from the UK. One guy came. And the level of interest in IMechE events tends to be really good, and people are prepared to travel from it. And there's a great energy there. I think we need to make the most of it.
Thanks, David. Terry, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, I think the guys have covered a lot of very valuable points there. And I think it's one of these things, it's a very personal thing, and it comes down to each individual as to what drives them forward, really. In my particular case, I think it was an opportunity I wanted to become chartered as early as I possibly could. I think what was driving me, so in the company I was working at, the senior people were all chartered engineers. I want to be chartered. So it gets me on this sort of this direction to become chartered, and I did that. And then one or two people got me involved with other things, and then it gets a little bit addictive. Then, and my IMechE career was ahead of my industry career. So I was doing things in the IMechE environment that were many years ahead of what I was doing in my industry career. So it's a bit of a self-development opportunity as well. And I ended up getting involved with chairing boards and things like that well before I had the chance in industry to do that. So for me, that was a really big plus, the opportunity to become a better person and better at handling these sort of things. So that was my main driver.
Yeah. Thank you, Terry. I can really echo that. When I speak to new developing engineers, it's that opportunity to engage with others, different industries, network, and by getting involved with various committees, they can develop some of those leadership skills, etc., that can help them on their journey to professional registration. A question here on the term of ingenieur. So the question is, in Europe, ingenieur is unambiguous, legally protected, and is highly respected as a profession. In the English-speaking word, engineer is ambiguous and not protected. In the interests of international alignment and differentiation to non-professional occupations, could the term ingenieur be adopted for the UK? Who would like to tackle that one first? I know it's one we get asked quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, I can answer from a UK perspective, I think, and then maybe the other guys can add a bit of a German perspective to it. We also have somebody in the audience, a guy called Raymond Hodgkinson, who's the chair of our International Strategy Board. And I don't know if we can bring him in, whether as an attendee, whether he can unmute just Raymond. If you can, after I spoke, maybe just do that. But my take on it is this, that really, the equivalent is not engineer and engineer, it's engineer and chartered engineer. So it's chartered engineer that's protected and recognised in the UK. So that's the parity between the two. Engineer in the UK has been abused, I think, really. It does everything. It'll fix your washing machine or mend your telly or do whatever. It's really almost like a technician role. But things are changing. So the Grenfell disaster in London, when the high-rise building burned down, raised a lot of questions on competence of engineers who were involved in that design of the cladding system on that building. And the review report that came out afterwards has really started to look at the licensing of people to perform those particular functions. So it may well change even further in the UK. I can well see that happening. But what I can also see really at the moment is that the parity is chartered engineer and engineer, because that's where we have a high bar. So for people to become a chartered engineer, and many of you will be on the call today, it's not easy to get there. You've got to work hard to get it. You've got to be academically qualified and then go through experience and training and development to show that you've reached the right standard of a professional engineer. So I think it's quite important, but there are comparisons there. But the challenge is post-Brexit is how you make that how you make it commutable. So you can easily move between the two. So have we managed to bring Raymond in on this or not? Are we not able to do that? It's a question for Emma, perhaps.
Am I muted?
Oh, Raymond, you're on. Well done.
Okay, just briefly, I think, to be very honest, for the UK, that ship has sailed. And I knew it was sailed the day I saw Dustman advertised as refuge disposal engineers. So, try as we might, I don't think we'll ever get back to a stage where engineer is a legally perfected term like doctor or vet. It just isn't going to happen. As Terry so rightly says, chartered engineer is. But even in Europe, it's not quite as clean cut as you might think. There's the Federation of European Engineers, engineering institutions, FIAM. They give a title EuroEng, you would think would be recognised in every European country. In Germany, some of our members have been told they'll be prosecuted if they use that, unless they first get their engineering qualifications recognised with the German engineering standard. There are also differences through the Washington Accord countries, where some countries say you only need a diploma or a bachelor's degree to be an engineer. The UK says to be a chartered engineer, you've got to be a master's. And that in itself has caused friction, because some people have tried to twist that to say, oh, that means the UK master's is the equivalent of whatever country you might choose to name bachelor's degree, which of course got all the academics up in. So the other little side of that is that I've had talks back in my day as Germany chair with the VDI, who said they couldn't recognise our chartered engineers as engineers because we accepted the practical route. My reply to that is, well, we couldn't accept your members because to be an engineer in Germany, you have to have attended 6 semesters at a recognised university. It doesn't say anything about passing the exam. And I pointed out to them, we do actually require our engineers to pass the exams before they call themselves engineers. So it's a very, very complex subject. But I would like to say a great big thank you to the Germany group for clarifying about getting the status recognised. That was a very major and helpful piece of work.
Okay, thanks, Raymond. Okay, Farah, back to the German group, nice.
Yes, I was just wondering if David or Graham wanted to comment on that.
Yeah, Raymond has rightly pointed out it's an incredibly complex situation. It's a little bit also a bit frustrating is that things like the IMechE title is not formally recognised in Germany. And it's interesting that the diploma engineer in Germany is primarily based on academic qualifications. So I think there will always be a problem in getting recognition in Germany, but we've found the route to do it. And it involves a few additional steps, but it should enable people to do that. I think coming to the general representation of engineers, and this is something that's been discussed in the UK for as long as I've been an engineer, it's an incredibly difficult topic to address. I think maybe as Raymond says, the normal engineer title, I think, is long gone now. To recover that situation is too big a challenge. But I think we can be doing something by re-emphasising the use of the title chartered engineer or professional engineer. That may give a vehicle to re-establish this status, particularly in the light of potential changes following the various inquiries that we've heard about, like Grenfell and so on. And I think that's bringing the whole topic of professional qualifications to the forefront again. And maybe this is something that Terry can develop with his government contacts as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One of the things that's really helped with, for example, Rolls-Royce, is that when you do become professionally registered, there's that commitment to continued professional development. So they know their engineers are going to stay at the forefront of technology, and they've committed to that. So that's been a really interesting kind of important point for Rolls-Royce in that. A question in terms of UK spec. Given the title UK in it and spec, whilst this is the same standard applied internationally, could the name reflect this worldwide approach instead?
It's a really good question. I've never been asked that question before, but it is a really good question to ask. But what I would say is that we don't own the title. So it's the Engineering Council. It's their title, not our title. So we could interfere, I suppose. We could try and persuade them to change it. But at the moment, it's actually controlled by them, by the Engineering Council.
Has it ever been raised, Terry, with them?
I don't know. Do you know what? I'll find out. I'll find out. And I'll report back to you, Farah. Yes?
Okay.
Sorry, can I come in on this one? Because I've been slightly involved through QMB.
Oh, yeah, go on, Ray.
The UK spec is just that. It's the UK specification. And as I mentioned briefly just before, in different Washington Accord countries, they have different specifications, different requirements. So I don't think we're going to get that changed very easily, because there is a different requirement in each Washington Accord country for what it takes to be a professional engineer.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Yeah.
Thank you, Ray.
We're benefiting from his international strategy board experience.
Yeah, definitely. A question for you, Terry. You mentioned your forthcoming meeting with the government. Do you see the opportunity for the IMechE to become more involved in government policy, such as the phase-in of the new electric vehicles, which is contrary to the IMechE's own stance on road transport decarbonisation?
Yes, I mean, I'm referring to a paper that came out quite recently to think about that. I think the answer is yes. I mean, I would like to see us much more engaged with government. We used to be a lot more engaged. But with changes of administration and changes of people in the IMechE, those connections break over time. And unless you continue to reform the connections, then you become separated. So we are respected by the government. They recognise who we are. We're right next door to them. We couldn't be any closer. If you want to pop round for a coffee, it's very easy. We host a lot of the MPs from time to time in the building when we're not under lockdown. But I will certainly be doing more now. Stephen Metcalf is the first. I hope there'll be more that I'll speak to during my time. And I will use those opportunities to lobby for things. I mean, I'm an automotive engineer, so yeah, I'm very passionate about electric vehicles. You know, I've seen them, and I've seen their true potential and what they can be, and we will all be driving them. I have no question about that whatsoever. The question is when we'll all be driving them, and that was a question I was going to try and answer in my presidential address, if I ever get the chance to deliver it.
Thank you, Terry. If we think of hopefully a time when we are post-COVID, then what are the main challenges facing the IMechE, the other institutions? You mentioned that you are meeting with the ICE and IET presidents, looking to collaborate, and would mergers ever be considered?
Well, that's a tough question to answer that. I think right now, I would say it's not on the agenda right now. That's not why I'm talking to them, for sure. And I think really there have been attempts in the past to connect us together, which have failed. We've had the UF report that's really spelled out the fact that really we need to come together, and there's lots of good reasons to do that. The practicalities of making it happen in a way that doesn't disenfranchise large numbers of members and creates a greater purpose is going to be quite difficult. And I think we collaborate hugely with these institutions already. If you look at the lower levels, at the regional levels and what have you, they work hand in glove with their counterparts in the IET and so on. So I see that we're going to, my view is anyway, that we're going to head in that direction of working more and more closely together, and there may become a point in time when it's a no-brainer that we actually engage more formally and perhaps even look at merger. But I actually think that's some time away. My personal view is I think that's some time away. So closer collaboration is important now, but recognise the fact that although we're all engineers, we do have differences. We are different, and we're representing members with different interests as well. So I think that is important.
Thanks, Terry. You're absolutely right. I think at a regional level, you see a lot of collaboration, joint events between the IET, ICE, and ourselves. So I think that's exactly what's happening at a regional level. David or Graham, any comments on that? Do you do joint events with the other institutions?
Up to now, I don't think we've got anything combined at the moment. I think we do have an opportunity to work more closely, certainly in the Hamburg area, with the Royal Aeronautical Society, who are actually really active here. And I try and participate in their meetings, and had several other members going along to them. So I try and publicise their events to at least start building the contact with the institution there. But I think the next step, once we get onto a more normal basis, will be to look at doing something jointly. Yes.
Thank you. Graham, anything to add on that?
No, not too much. I think it comes down to, again, of finding out if there are any people from the other institutions out here. I think the IMechE is generally a much more known institution anyway, and I'm not sure how I would go about finding if people are out here in Germany. There's more connection with the as David said, the VDI, the German engineer group.
I would say it's a country-dependent thing, isn't it? So obviously in Germany, the connection and collaboration with VDI would be far more relevant, far more important than looking at civils or IET or whatever. I was in Hong Kong last year meeting our branch in Hong Kong, and they work hand in glove with the Hong Kong Institute of Engineers very effectively. So it's very much a local thing. But by collaboration, they become more relevant to their members.
Yes. I'm conscious of time. It's now a bit past 8:30. Do we have any final parting words from the panelists before we close for the evening?
Well, I'm unmuted, so I'll go first.
Okay.
Just really to thank everybody. I mean, I hope when you come to these events, you don't know what you're going to get really, but I hope you found some of the discussion interesting. It's certainly good for me to hear from David and Graham a little bit about what's going on in Germany. I'm very pleased that they've got a healthy team of people there doing some good stuff for us. And I really do hope I get the chance to visit in my presidential year. Maybe not. I'll perhaps come after that, but who knows? So I'm president until May anyway, so we've got a chance yet.
Thank you very much, Harry. Graham, David, any parting words?
Just to encourage people to get involved. I've had a couple of messages in the chat saying, firstly from Raymond, saying that there is still a local Stammtisch in the Frankfurt area, and the small group there, and an update from Paul saying that they've done some joint events with the ICE in Munich. But yeah, I'd also like to say thanks for everybody participating this evening. It's great to have this exchange, and some very interesting and fascinating questions come up from it. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'd probably just mirror what David just said there. It's actually almost a bit of an opportunity for us with COVID in being able to host these online things, and I think in a way we've almost been able to increase our engagement during COVID. And again, if people are there with ideas, then just send them in, and it's relatively easy. Well, it's relatively easy for me to at least to ask Farah or Emma to organise an event, and the support from the IMechE is really great.
So, I guess it's time to close the event. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to all of those that attended. Thank you, Emma, for all the logistics and organising everything, and being able to unmute Ray so we could get another panelist involved. Thank you, Graham. Thank you, David. And thank you very much, Terry, for doing your presidential visit virtually. And hopefully we will have an opportunity to hopefully maybe do one at the embassy in Berlin. But that would be fantastic. And it's been great to see such engagement from all the members, and the variety of questions, and to see those from many different regions being here today. So thank you all, and I hope you found it informative. And I will now end the event. Thank you.